Before we proceed further, I would like to introduce our expert panelist for the day. So first resource of ours is Dr. Vijay Habbu sir. Sir is a BTech and MTech from ICT Mumbai, PhD from University of Leeds, UK in Polymer Science and postdoctoral fellow at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He is researching in high performance material. He is a chartered colorist and a fellow of Society of Dyers and Colorists. Sir has been a member of various professional bodies such as Society of Dyers and Colorists, Textile Association of India, Society for Surface Science and Technology. He is in the editorial boards of the Journal of Packaging Technology and Research and Colorage. He has been the past president of UDCT Alumni Association, India. Dr. Vijay sir was a senior scientist and head of the Polymer Processing Department at NCL Pune. He was with Reliance since 1994 as R&D head of Reliance Polyester till retirement. Presently, he is a distinguished fellow of Polymer Science at ICT Mumbai. He teaches Polymer Science at various institutes and he consults for the sustainability assurance for Reliance Pectem sector. He is a technical advisor to PET industry associations, spearheading sustainability thoughts and actions. His engagement in the government includes him as an expert member on several committees. He is a part of leadership team that is engaging with various governmental agencies, and he is in connection with the management of plastics in the new age as a member of Maharashtra government's committee on the plastic waste recycling. Our today's second expert panelist is Dr. Prasad Modak sir. Dr. Prasad Modak holds a total experience of more than 40 years with specialties in environmental policy, environmental assessment, ESG at financing institutions, business and sustainability, circular economy, and capacity building in environmental management. He holds BTech in civil engineering, MTech in environmental science and engineering from IIT Bombay, and he has achieved his doctorate of engineering from Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok. Sir was a professor at the Center for Environmental Science and Engineering at IIT Bombay, and later he was a professor adjunct 1 at the Center for Technology Alternatives in Rural Areas. He is currently working as a managing director of EMC and director of eConnect Knowledge Foundation. Sir has worked with almost all key UN multilateral and bilateral development institutions in the world. These include the World Bank, IFC, Asian Development Bank, European Investment Bank, UNEP, UNIDO, UNDP, DFID, Swedish and Dutch embassies in Delhi, and intergovernmental organizations such as Asian Productivity Organization, Tokyo, to name a few. Sir was a member of Indian Resources Panel at the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and currently he is serving as a member of Task Force on Sustainable Public Procurement at the Ministry of Finance. He is also on the advisory committee of G20 India Presidency, Circular Economy, set up by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Currently, he chairs the Product Advisory Committee set up by NCDEX on carbon market. Apart from being professionally active, Sir has published various books on environmental management. The third resource for today's panel session is Dr. Sudha Goel ma'am. Dr. Goel ma'am is currently professor in Civil Engineering Department and the School of Environmental Science and Engineering of the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. She has completed her BE in Environment. Yes.
I'm Dr. Habbu. Sorry to bother you, but there is some. Can you just confirm if you can hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir. Yes,
sir.
sir. We can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry about it. Carry on, please.
It's okay. So she has completed her BE in Environmental Engineering from LT College of Engineering, Ahmedabad, and MSc and PhD in Environmental Engineering from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, USA. And she has been working on various aspects of environmental engineering since then. She has worked on several consulting projects and taught various courses in India and abroad. Her research interests include solid and hazardous waste management, water quality and treatment, and environmental risk assessment. She has written several books and authored several papers in international journals. The fourth resource for our today's panel session is Suhas Tuljapurkar sir. Sir needs no words of introduction to this august gathering. With more than 40 years of extensive experience of working in the legal field with diverse stakeholders, Sir is performing the multiple leadership roles in the form of being Managing Partner Legacies Partners and Founder Director Legacies Private Limited, to name a few. He is one of the leading lawyers in India in the field of corporate governance, compliance, ethics, legal strategies. He is considered as India's foremost expert in governance, compliance, and ethics space. To keep it crisp, I would like to term Sir as the compliance man of India. After having brief introduction of all the resources, I would like to introduce the moderator for the panel session, Mr. Upendra Parki sir, who is actually heading our ESG department at Legacies Private Limited. Now, I hand over mic to Parki sir to start with the panel.
Good evening to all of you, and it's my pleasure. All the panelists are here. I think Modak Saab is also joining. So he's already joined. So I request all the panelists to have the video on.
Dr. Habu here. In my case, I'm getting a message that my video has been disabled.
Okay, Mayura, can you help him, please? Just.
Yes, now everyone can on the video.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. We are able to see. Thank you, Sudha ma'am. Thank you. So I think let us start the discussion, sir. So I will just begin with that. Wish you all happy World Environment Day. And as per our theme today, so we would like to discuss the changes in the corporate lifestyle, including the individual lifestyle for the plastic waste orbiting the plastic pollution. As all of you are aware that there is a lot of information available in the public, and everyone is saying that we have to change the lifestyle. But as in a first round of you can say comments from all of you, is it that lifestyle is really being changing, or you have anything else as a perception? Just have an beginning comments or introductory comments one by one. So I request Dr. Habu to start with that, and then Dr. Moda.
Namaskar and happy World Environment Day to you. Good morning from this part of the world. Lifestyle has always to be changed according to modern times, and since this panel is discussing about plastic, we need to understand the background that plastics came with such a rapid speed and scale because of their advantages. Right? They were invented to provide the advantages over the traditional materials that are available. However, everything, ati sarvatra varjaye. So since this has happened at such a rapid scale and speed, mankind has not been able to equilibrate with its usage and responsible behavior of disposal. Responsible usage and responsible disposal has not matched with the speed with which we have used or incorporated plastics in our lives. That is the problem. So currently we need to understand that there is two aspects of plastics. One is a very useful aspects of plastics, which we cannot deny. But in the other case, there is a surplus usage of it. And that surplus usage of it, there is enough scope to trim them down. For example, the kind of huge packaging that we get in retail stores these days, that there is scope for reducing that immensely. I stop here for my initial comments. Later on, we'll discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Dr. Modak?
I will say I will almost echo what Vijay just talked about, the importance of change in lifestyle. So it's not just personal lifestyle. I think he ended talking about packaging. It's also the style of the business. So there are two lifestyles, no? Lifestyle of a business and lifestyle of an individual. think we'll have to look at both these lifestyles and how can we influence the our lifestyles to change to like what Vijay just now said, that avoiding excessive use. Uh, I'm underlying the fact that you cannot get out of plastics, extremely useful material. Recognizing that part, let's avoid excessive use. And the second part, of course, that after you use, how do you manage the discarded plastic better? Because you mentioned about the impact on the marine life, and the marine litter is the word we use many times. It's important, therefore, that we practice that lifestyle both in the business and in our individual behavior, that we put back as much we can the plastic back to a better use. Now, one thought I will add here, and I'm sure Vijay, you might like to take it up at some point in this panel, is that unless we think pure, unless we think pure as much as we can in developing plastic for multiple functions, the reuse and recycling, it can always become challenging. So going all the way to the first principles upstream and start looking at alternatives, test whether those alternatives are functionally acceptable, economically viable, and also in their life cycle uh, are sustainable. And then only we can look at how do we look for options other than plastic. So there are two elements, right? One is don't overuse, but also find alternatives. It's easy to say find alternatives. We need that as a program on a mission mode, literally, which is more technical, which is also more, looking at not just technical, but environmental, economic consideration at the same time. I think that is what I would call, as a change needed in our lifestyles and our behaviors. So this is from my side. It is the opening remark.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I request Sudha ma'am to have her opening remarks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Very well.
Yeah. So happy Environment Day to everyone. I'm happy to be part of this discussion, and I would like to say about plastics, we definitely have to do a couple of things, and that is we have to look for substitutes. The first thing is that everywhere, we should almost have another sort of antenna on us that we should think about whatever plastic we are using in our daily lives, can we find a better substitute? And it's not easy, because what I find is that today's lifestyle, we are moving to online delivery of food, online delivery of so many products. All of them are coming packaged in plastic. So we are talking about replacing plastics, but the fact of the matter is that we're actually using more plastic. So we really need to take collective action on that. So that is definitely there. And the other point is that where plastic is necessary, you can't do away with it because we just don't have another substitute, then we need to have segregation at source. We need to keep the grades of plastic as separate from each other. It's not easy. I know it's not easy to do, but it's possible. So I would say just that much about plastic pollution at this stage. I know it's very difficult.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you have raised very important point. We have to look at holistically instead of only looking at in piecemeal thing. So now I will request Suhas sir to have his opening comments.
Yeah, I think I echo whatever everyone else has said, Dr. Habu, Dr. Modak, Dr. Mrs. Goel. Thank you very much for those comments. You see, my take is slightly different. And being a lawyer, I'm a bit cynical by nature. So I look at things in a very, very different manner. You look at, there have been legislations that have come up, not only in India, but almost everywhere globally, banning single-use plastic. At some micron levels, those are completely banned, prohibited all across India through a legislative mandate. But what's happened in practice and in reality is very little has been done for implementation of those legislations that have been coming to the forefront. Secondly, my second point is, I mean, you talked about alternatives, and I think Dr. Murdoch alluded to say that it's very important for us to balance out these alternatives. I don't think there is enough work happening at R&D level today in terms of alternatives that are emerging. Or, if you are saying that we want to, transform ourselves, or we want to move from linear to circular, especially look at 55% of the plastic waste that actually globally goes into the landfills, or it's not incinerated, it's not disposal of the waste there. It goes into natural streams. 55% of that plastic waste is currently kind of being quote unquote untreated in the environment. So if that much amount of plastic waste is today not coming into the circularity, you look at what's happening on the R&D and patent side today. There are almost about 2,150 patents that are holding the fort on the plastic waste and circularity, plus new innovations and inventions. But that number is abysmally low when you talk about, let's say, AI, for example, as a technological advancement, or even core technologies that are coming up. So not enough is being done for execution of the legislation. Not enough is being done to find out alternatives, and investments are not happening. Not enough is being done on the IPR side. So I think, while I think we have lost our battle, so by 2030, for example, we will not be able to achieve the SDG goals. One part of critical goal there, climate change, talking about net zero. Large part of it today, as understood by the world, is plastic. And what is it that we need to do? I think that's the tough question today for corporates, and especially corporate India, to look at where R&D spend on the product itself is much less. How do you look at generating alternatives or creating an ecosystem where waste is converted and recycled? That's my opening remarks. I'm happy to kind of
Thank you, sir. I
with
think
all the experts.
Thank you, sir. I think you have brought it very important element, and we'll come back to you as far as the legality point of view, and also the improvements which has been done by the industry and other areas. But before that, I would like to ask a simple question to Dr. Habbu sir, Vijay Habbu sir. Sir, we are habituated to have the plastic in our day life or even in corporate life. And earlier it was considered as a replacement to steel and other prime metals. Plastic can be replaced to that. And now the scenario is changing. How this aspect is being considered from the plastic manufacturing industry point of view, sir? And how they are looking at these issues, plastic pollution, or the change in the plastic manufacturing in this respect?
The plastic industry, when you use the word industry, it is not a monolithic entity. It comprises multiple players, beginning from what is called resin manufacturers, such as Reliance. There are 15 major companies. Most of them are public sector companies. So they manufacture what is called the granules, the chips. In Marathi, they call khadi sakar. So it's in that form. That is then converted into what are called plastic basic intermediate stages, such as films and everything. Then there are called converters, who convert these films into bags, toys, things like that, bottles. And then there is the brand owners, and then there are retailers. So this is the entire chain of plastic. When we say plastic industry, it starts from resin manufacturers, producers, and converters, three basic things. So as I said in passing, the government itself, and I'm talking about the government of India aspects presently, has invested heavily in the manufacture of plastics, resins. Now to suddenly say that these are vilified materials The government, on the other hand, before this plastic or alongside the plastic waste management rules and their amendments came, 6 of them have come so far. The government, on the other hand, is pushing the plastic industry to increase its turnover and exports. So this is the situation that the narrative will get caught up in. On the one hand, government themselves want to increase the production of plastics, and on the other hand, they're curtailing this thing. So we need to understand what exactly is happening. So industry is also, there is confusion in industry, particularly in the small scale industry who are converting these resins into films, intermediate products or final products. So there is immense anxiety and confusion in this thing, what exactly they are supposed to do. On the 5 years ago, the government was encouraging and pushing them to increase production. And now suddenly they're saying, no, ban this, ban that, ban that. They are also human beings as much as we are, and they are also conscious of the environmental impact. So it's not that they're villains, out there to kind of ruin the marine life and everything. It's the nature of the irresponsible disposal that is causing this entire situation. So therefore, to answer your question, industry is also going through an anxious phase. They don't know what will be banned next. And therefore, there is a huge amount of investment that is waiting to be done, and they're actually halted. They don't know what to do. So plastic industry is anxious about it. What is also happening is, in answer to the previous question, the last panelist, is that immense amount, I would like to contradict him, immense amount of research is happening to find alternatives. Immense, at all levels, at industry levels, at university levels, at research institute levels, because everybody wants to find an alternative. However, the research is not necessarily motivated by environmental concerns and general nobility. Primarily, any research is triggered by a scope for profit making. And that is where I would agree with Prasad, and I have created a matrix when we decide to find alternatives, that alternatives need to fulfill what I call the Habu matrix. That is, they need to fulfill 5 FE, functional equivalence. So if you're replacing a bag, you're saying ban plastic bag, and then what? You use a paper bag. Were we not using paper bags earlier? Were we not using textile bags earlier? I come from Mumbai, and so would many of you. It's June now. Wait for a week and try carrying your important documents in a paper bag or a cloth bag. So it is only the plastic bags will come to the rescue of protecting the contents in that thing. So this is what I call functional equivalence. Otherwise, it becomes a narrative banner holding a bag for a bag, replace it. It becomes an English replacement, not a functional replacement. The other thing, the environment. So all these things are also, and then the other is pieces. That is, it should be cost effective. It should be equally environmentally better than what you're replacing. Then it should be scalable. It cannot be some kind of bamboo cups and everything which you get award in conferences and you clap. That will not be successful. And they should be safe. So if you're replacing one material with the other, it should be safer than plastics. Only then it will be viable. Otherwise, it just becomes a narrative. Industry is also looking at these alternatives, plastic industry, because they are also worried. They have invested heavily in the machinery. So they are also waiting with bated breath if there is a success in finding any alternative material, so that they could utilize that material. After all, they're in the business for making profits. They don't have any special love for plastics or for leather. As long as they're able to provide goods that are needed, they're happy. So therefore, we need to understand that entire industry is also passing through an anxious phase. For the moment, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you have given very good perspective from industry point of view, and generally from the other side of the industry are really they are not much aware of what is happening. So I think I will thank you for this perspective. And then since you have raised a very important issue, the R&D, and we have another 2 panelists, Sudha madam and Modak sir, so who are also involved in you can say the research R&D. So I would go to the Sudha ma'am and I think hear her views, that what she wants to say about as far as R&D and the alternative plastic is considered. Sudha ma'am.
Yeah, thank you again. I would say a couple of things about the research that my group is doing. So we are looking at microplastic pollution. One of the bigger findings that has happened recently, one of my research scholars, he found that if you take disposable paper cups, which we are all very, fond of using for tea, coffee, and so many other things, you find that if you're adding a hot beverage to a disposable paper cup, some of that inner lining, which is made of plastic, is going to start melting. It starts breaking down. And you're basically ingesting a small amount of plastic with every drink. So this is microplastic pollution, and we are all affected by it. So, your the title of your workshop is corporate life transmutation. So I thought that would be the best example for corporate life to change, because when I think about corporate life in India, people generally use disposable paper cups for tea and coffee. I think we need to adopt the same thing which has been happening in the West for 30 years, 40 years, maybe longer. No one drinks their tea and coffee regularly from paper cups. Once in a while, you have no choice. You're at a train station or an airport, you have no choice. You have to drink it from a paper cup. But on a regular basis, you can definitely avoid it. You can have ceramic cups, you can have glass mugs, you can have so many other substitutes which are healthier and will not cause chronic health problems. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, but R&D to this effect is happening.
So we are part of that. So
Okay.
one of my students did his PhD, and this was part of his PhD. So
Okay.
that's why I highlighted this particular problem. And one of the outcomes is that we should move away from regular use of such materials. And the same thing I would like to say about other food containers. We are increasingly packaging our food in plastic containers. And if we can find substitutes for that, that would be better.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Modak sir, what is your opinion on R&D happening in India or worldwide? Is it in the right direction you feel, or you have some different opinion? Sir, sir, please unmute yourself.
I was just saying that it's too broad a question for me to answer. And I don't really work myself into R&D in the plastic. Vijay is the person to respond, and he already has given his views. Lot happening certainly when it comes to R&D in plastic, alternatives to plastic and plastic itself. But what I would like to highlight here, Upendra, is there's another interesting dimension that we must all see. It is because we are promoting as much possible recycling of plastic. There is a significant recycled content that we are now seeing, especially when it comes to packaging, as one example, containers as an example, where there is a need to do a good amount of research. How do you set the recycled standards, plastic standards, to ensure that there are no risks to health of the people who are using those recycled plastics? We have many cases where we see recycled plastic toys being used by the children, and their saliva when they will chew the toy could have possibilities of release of carcinogenic substances, maybe because the plastic waste stream that was used for recycling had flame retardants, and that is not easy to remove when you're recycling that plastic material. So a lot of work needs to be done, and it's happening, but we need to increase the pace of that research on recycle standards. Now we're talking about use of plastics on surfaces of highways. We have Indian road standard IRC code of practice for that already. Plastic waste has been quite heavily used in the surfacing, the blending with the bitumen. Well, there are questions people are asking, like what Dr. Sudha talked about, the release of microplastics. At the same time, you would see very many successful cases in Australia, in Europe, where the plastic and sawdust has been used to develop composites which are used for railway sleepers. So when we talk about R&D, here I'm referring to R&D on safe recycled plastic products. Today, if you look at it, the railway sleepers in Australia are made entirely out of waste plastic, and they meet all the needed engineering and environmental specifications. So also has been a similar practice in Europe and quite a lot in the United Kingdom. I remember, and this is Suhas also, I think I mentioned to one of my discussions that I spoke to chairman of Indian Railway Board to look at this possibility. And definitely now, research has started, people are working, and how do we make good use of that plastic waste in a safe way? So apart from the R&D in the plastic as a material itself, which as Vijay said, a lot is happening, there is a very, very high need to bring in R&D in how do you have recycled plastic products which are functionally acceptable and also environmentally safe. This to me is a very important area because there is so much push that recycle karo. And in that recycle karo, we don't want to create a situation that, we are going from, whatever you say, from one fire to a bigger fire and, risks our ecosystems. So that is where there's a major R&D thrust required, according to me. Thank you.
I think you have brought in very important point that the recycling of plastic is a important aspect. We'll come to that subject, and also the technologies which is there or which can be coming up in the near future. We will discuss on that. But before that, the lifestyle change is, and as far as corporate is concerned, is I feel it is from a top-down approach. And Suhas sir is assessing number of board of directors and also from legal point of view. Sir, what is your opinion as far as the corporates are considered or the board of directors are considered, how they look at not only the plastic, but as an, you can say all the changes that needs to be done as far as life is concerned? Suhas, sir. Sir, you please unmute.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Upendraji, and thanks for that articulation, Dr. Habur, Dr. Modak, Dr. Goyal. You see, when you talk about companies, and I think I'm going to focus my discussion on Indian companies, for example. What do they need to do? The fountainhead is the Companies Act 2013, and Companies Act 2013 has what Girish mentioned in his opening remark, a provision under section 166, which provision relates to the duties of directors. And very clearly, it articulates that a director of a company, now it doesn't distinguish whether the company is listed, unlisted, private, public. So section 8, all types of companies. A director of a company shall act in good faith for, inter alia, the protection of environment. And I think that's the fountainhead. I've seen the company's law in Delaware. I've seen in various states. I've seen in few of them abroad, the kind of other jurisdictions. I haven't come across a statutory provision that fastened duty of protection of environment on a director of a company. And therefore, I think if you are saying that I'm not going to change my corporate lifestyle, or as a director, I will not facilitate that, and I will continue to use, take a simple example such as, water in plastic bottles. If the corporate entity as its culture or as its behavior, or in the normal way, continues to use plastic bottles and has ability to change it but does not, that would amount to dereliction of duty at the director's level. And I think while all directors are in fiduciary capacity insofar as company is concerned, more importantly, I think if this duty is not discharged in a rightful manner, which is where I would come back again to say that, not enough is being done. Not enough is being done when you talk about prevention and recycling technologies. You're talking about conversion of disposal of waste and leakage removal, because I think how do you mitigate the release of leakage of material there? And of course, you know, bio feedstock and those kind of technologies. We're talking about pyrolysis as one of the technologies that will help. Is enough being done? But at the board level today, there are simple things that board of directors can do. And those simple things, if they don't do it today, I think it's probably too late, but it will also reflect on their dereliction of duty. That ought to be considered as a fountainhead in Indian context. And therefore, I think we have probably the only country where the legislation, mandates directors, all directors, irrespective of whether you are an occupier, whether you are running factory or not. Even when you talk about electronic waste, when you talk about plastic waste, and that's universal applicability there. There is a possibility of dereliction of duty, but if you want to make the change, that's the fountainhead. That's a great help to anybody to make that change and start it from there.
Sir, just a leading question based on that. Even in opening remark, also you said the implementation of the rules and regulation is an issue in India. So, so what is your opinion? Do you feel that we go to the judiciary or have a files or petitions, and it is just to delay the process or to have a time instead of changing it as early as possible? Sir, I would like to have your views in this respect.
See, the legislative amendments that have come in have been challenged successively. The challenges have happened at the High Court level. I think a couple of matters have gone up to Supreme Court level is what I believe. But no courts have intervened in favor of plastic manufacturers or favor of not executing the amended provisions. So courts have not interfered or not intervened in favor of that. They have allowed legislatures to go ahead. Now, therefore, judicial intervention is not there on the negative side. Okay, let's look at on the positive side. Is it there? And I think again, there's not too much of empirical evidence or that too many cases have gone up as to whether the courts have intervened on the positive side of it. Now, in the backdrop of this, like any other law that you implement in our country, in India, the implementation of this law becomes very, very challenging. And you have state legislation, state laws being passed at different points in time with different amendments. Central laws have come in the force, and it's an issue on execution. But I think entire world is struggling on execution insofar as, let's say, single-use bans of plastic material. Even if you take that one single isolated event, then world is also struggling on how do you enforce it. How do you make sure that it's executed correctly? And that's where I'm coming back to say that, fountainhead in any company are the directors. So at the corporate level, at least, if this duty of the director is taken seriously, I mean, you won't need a regulator, you won't need any person coming from outside your organization to come and enforce. You can actually start taking actions on your own.
Thank you, sir. I think for very interesting comments. So now I would like to ask Dr. Abbu sir, as Prasad Modak sir also emphasized on the recirculation of the reuse and recycle of the plastic waste. So, so from your point of view, how long it can be recycled, and really is it possible, or it will help to the changing the lifestyle if we continue to recycle the things?
Yeah, so I'll try to say for all these things, all our conversations and approaches need to be based on information, authentic information from the field. For example, one section 166 was cited about so and so act. Now, and in passing, he mentioned plastic bottles. Now, this is how misinformation starts getting seeped in and entrenched. For example, in the SUP list, single-use plastic list, plastic bottles are not even listed because government and everybody recognizes that the water bottles are the best materials for recycling. In fact, the shirt that I'm wearing is made from recycled PET bottles. Recently, Prime Minister Modi wore a kind of jacket which became a hit. to show that how PET bottles, water bottles got recycled and can be recycled. And PET bottles, water bottles are a best example of how not to wade into areas where we don't know enough about it. Because and so the single-use plastic, we need to be aware that the government has identified 19 items that are on the banned list. And like Mr. Suhas explained very correctly, there is implementation is a problem, and that's a problem because they are so pervasive and they are so useful. Coming back to your question on recycling, all plastics, we need to understand the word plastic is used as if it's a kind of single entity. They are not. Just like metals, there are hundreds of metals and alloys, so are plastics. Each plastic has a different chemistry and different properties during usage and therefore properties during recycling. While PET water bottles can be recycled the best, and that's why if you look at any water bottle and turn it upside down, you will see a triangle inside of which there is a code, that is a recycling code. That code for PET bottles is number 1. You pick up any plastic bottle and invert it, and you'll find a recycling triangle inside of which there is a recycling code. That code is different for different plastics, meaning it has different properties, and therefore the recycling techniques that need to be adopted for each of these plastics are different. So there is no one single technique of recycling. There is mechanical recycling, there is chemical recycling, there is pyrolysis, there is gasification. These are all techniques that are used or can be used to bring back the used plastic into a useful loop. So some of the plastics such as PET, which are in the PET recycling code is number 1. And that has been number 1 because it's the best recycling material. Now that can it be infinitely recycled? No. The answer is no. While I'm giving you positives about plastics, I'm also telling you glass is an infinitely recycled material, infinitely recyclable material. It is not recycled material. It is recyclable because of its properties. However, we need to understand recycling, sustainability, these are not necessarily the same thing. Glass can be recycled, so on that count it scores higher. But is it a sustainable material? No, because its manufacturing and everything requires very high temperatures. So we need to understand when we talk about environment, what exactly are we trying to do? We need to be very clear. Are we talking about environmental emissions? Are we talking about litter? Are we talking about material conservation? What exactly are we trying to do when we say that we should adopt this corporate style, that corporate style? For example, if we want, all corporates need to first map what is the water consumption for drinking or for washing. If you change, for example, from PET bottles to glass bottles, you will need to wash them with detergent, rinse them and rewash them. What is the water consumption used in the whole process? So only when we do a scientific mapping of the alternatives that you're proposing, can you then say I'm doing a kind of responsible thing. Otherwise, we just get into scaremongering and we get into the kind of NGO type of banner holding. So what can be done in the corporate life is currently, if you're, let's say, for example, take your dinner plates. Why can't we use our kalichi pana, the banana leaves and everything? Those can very well be used. So areas where there are no conflicts and where there is clear and indication of a clear environmental benefit, we should change that. Certainly not. Don't stay with plastics, but we need to have a full understanding of what exactly we are trying to achieve. So recycling of plastics cannot be done infinitely, to answer a specific question, but their properties can be reinstated up to some 15-20 times, but it all depends on different plastics. Eventually, a good example is what Prasad gave, which is called end-of-life solutions, meaning at the end of their life, they can be converted into benches and things like that, which are very useful and not human invasive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think it's a very important, you can say, point of view as far as plastic recycling is concerned. Now, I will again go back to the Dr. Prasad, sir. Sir, you are emphasizing on the recycling. So what are the emergent technologies you feel that that corporate should look at? And also the now some United Nations report is going to come by 2024 for a legal agreement. So how it is going to, you can say, what are the futuristic way ahead as far as the recycling of plastic is concerned, and the general corporate who are using plastic, what type of a future they should look for?
Let us distinguish the two. One is those who are consuming plastic and those who are going to do or are already doing business on wasted plastics, right?
Yeah.
So now, if you look at from the other side, there are those who are finding business opportunity in collecting, sorting, and recycling the plastic waste. There is certainly a great opportunity. It is growing. So we have excellent examples in India itself, where waste plastic collected by the informal sector is after aggregation, uh, taking it through a very innovative cleaning processes, and then making useful products out of it, which are acceptable to other corporate world. Like for example, company, some of you may know Banyan Nation, which does this and provides the recycled bumpers to Tata Motors and packaging of L'Oreal. This is an example how a corporate is also accepting recycled products if these products meet their functional requirements at a competitive price. And that is where I would say cleaning technology, particularly of waste plastic, has played a very important role apart from the other technologies which Vijay talked about, which included pyrolysis, where you talk about making fuel out of plastic and end of life use in the composites and so on and so forth. I here want to bring in another dimension to our discussion, and maybe Suhas, you might like to comment, is what happened when there was a green fencing done in China. And then we had also a big step taken by the government of China to ban the import of plastics waste streams, provided they made certain contamination standard. And this, what is called sometimes as China's sword, affected the entire recycling business of plastic and paper across the world. Now, India also in 2019 responded in so-called ban of the plastic waste streams, got it diluted in 2021. And because we also wanted to flourish, keep our recycling the industry, ongoing with the incoming plastic waste coming from other parts of the world. The reason I'm highlighting this is waste, plastic waste itself is a huge business opportunity, and that on the global pressures would somehow mean that we'll have to do our own gatekeeping and at some stage stop importing the plastic scrap or the waste which is contaminated. China rejected because of the threat of contaminated plastic waste streams coming. So in terms of technologies, Upendra, what you asked me, I mean, there are many potential technologies, but one of the very important technologies is segregation and cleaning. We haven't done much there. There's a huge role of robotics, which is coming in, like Vijay mentioned, there's so many different types of plastics, and how do you separate them and how do you handle them differently depending on what kind of plastic material it is. So I would say three areas coming in big time in reverse logistics, separation and cleaning, which is again a very important technology which will start playing a role when it comes to recycling industry in plastic particularly. There are also efforts being made. There's one in Rajasthan happening already for plastic waste recyclers hub, and creating some common infrastructure to promote safe plastic waste recycling. These are I would put them as opportunities if we want to grow in this sector. Also keep watching the international policies. I gave you example of China. India did take a step, but Thailand moved faster further. Indonesia also is banning. So it's important to understand also the geopolitics. And remember, a lot is linked to the petroleum prices when we talk about the economics. So it's a complex area in terms of how do you survive and win the plastic recycling business. That's what I thought I'll say, as another important dimension to remember.
No, sir, just little bit some clarification. Is there anything expected from United Nation in the legal agreement to stop the pollution, plastic pollution?
I'm not aware about the UN legal agreement. I'm not.
So there is
really-
a, it seems there is a, I think there is a legal agreement under negotiation is going on as far as United Nations is concerned, and they're going to have 193 countries will come to a conclusion for
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I have no idea about the progress on that. Yeah.
okay, okay. Sudha ma'am, you are I think work extensively on the waste management as well as the marine pollution. So from marine pollution point of view, the recycling technologies is really progressive, or a lot of things needs to be done as far as marine pollution is concerned.
That's a good question. Again, this was part of my research group's work. What we found, in fact, the same student who worked on disposable paper cups, he also worked on the degradation of two different grades of plastic. So he looked at polypropylene and LDPE, low density polyethylene. And what he found is that the degradation of plastics in terrestrial environments is much greater than what happens in the marine environment. And for reasons that I'm not aware of, somehow marine pollution is getting more attention than terrestrial pollution of soil and so on. So the marine environment probably has resulted in, bioaccumulation of plastics in the tissue of animals and so on, and that is more dramatic. So people are aware of that. But in the terrestrial environment, it's less dramatic, but perhaps more unhealthy, let's say, because you will get soil pollution, you will get reduced primary productivity, your agricultural productivity can go down. You can have leachate problems because if the plastic has additives in it, which are poisonous and so on. So that will again affect the biota of the soil, that will affect the crops. We're not even aware of what the problems might be in the long term. So that is what I wanted to say about degradation of plastics in terrestrial environments. There's another issue about marine environments, and that is we are discharging wastewater, and this wastewater contains personal care product materials. And some of these personal care products have microbeads in there. These microbeads, some of them are made out of plastic. So yes, we are discharging microplastics into the environment directly, not just from degradation. See, you throw a plastic bag or a bottle into any environment, terrestrial or marine, it will degrade. It will slowly degrade due to photodegradation and so many other processes. It will result in microplastic formation. But these personal care products, cosmetic products like shampoos and face washes and body lotion, God knows what else is there in the market, they have these granules, they have these microplastic granules, which are being discharged first into freshwater environments and from there into marine environments. So that's another source, and it has been banned. These microplastics have been banned in quite a few countries. Many countries have already banned them. I don't know what the status in India is. I don't think there is any discussion about this issue as of now. So I'll stop with that. Yeah.
Okay, madam, just further to that thing, now as we have discussed a lot of regarding the recycling and the emerging technologies and all those things, but in all these aspect, there are so many groups are involved, from the manufacturers to the recyclers, and as far as the abatement of pollution is concerned, as far as plastic is concerned, a lot of external agencies involvement is there, with a lot of dependency on the recyclers, technology providers, or even the process technologies. So do you feel that in India particularly, there will be a success, or from your point of view, what we should be doing in this case to make it successful? Madam, you have to unmute, please.
Yeah, could you repeat your question, please?
Yeah. See, as far as the success of beating the plastic pollution, we have to go for a recycling technologies, and number of agencies are involved, from slag picker, which is you can say a semi-skilled or unskilled technology person, to very sophisticated technologies like pyrolysis processes and other things to have a real benefit of plastic pollution. So, what is your opinion that how it will be successful, or you are very optimistic about it, or you have some other opinion in this case?
I don't have an opinion on this issue. This is something that, for me, I read whatever I read in terms of reports and papers and so on. So what is happening in the market is low level, low cost, whatever Mr. Girish Kolyote was mentioning in his talk. I agree 100% with whatever he mentioned, that these are the technologies that are available. Some of them are commercially successful, they are low cost, but they are also highly polluting. And the higher cost, less pollution technologies we have not adopted. Now, it's very obvious why we have not adopted them, because we can't afford them, or the recycling industry in India is in the hands of the informal sector. So things are changing. I know that in the e-waste sector, things are changing in the correct direction. I'm not so sure what is happening about the plastic sector.
Modak sir, I think your views will be very important in these aspects.
Honestly, Upendra, I don't have much to add. We discussed quite a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, sir, so what is your opinion that so many groups are involved, so many new areas are getting involved as far as recycling or the plastic waste is concerned? So the legal framework is also upcoming. So what is your views in this aspect?
No, I'm not too sure at the global level what's happening on the legal framework, but I can kind of say that 25 years ago, when I started working in the energy sector as energy lawyer, we saw the progression made when we talked about renewable energy. And if I were to pick up some lessons from the manner in which renewable energy today has been reshaped, you see, there are, I mean, everybody said thermal is dead, and you've got to kind of move away from thermal, get into greener and renewable energies, and move along. And I think if we look at the journey past 20 years on the renewable energy, and if there are some lessons that can be learned for plastic recycling, I think there is a lot that needs to be done, is what my view would be. Now, focus on various elements, including green fencing that Dr. Modak talked about, including reverse logistics related area that you talked about, use for separation of plastic. Try use machine learning, which is coming to the forefront today. Can it be used? Can you actually track the plastic through let's say distributed digital technologies such as blockchain, and use that to track how it is happening? And if initially in the renewable energy space, we all know the per megawatt cost for solar was very high. It was capital intensive, and people were shying from investing. But today, I think the per megawatt capitalized cost has come down to a manageable level, and renewable has become and taken the center stage globally also. So, I mean, we need to learn from that journey to say that what is it that we all need to do, whether corporates voluntarily abiding by something, or whether governments coming out with legislation, or individuals trying to do in a self-regulated manner whatever best possible we have to do. We have to do it. The imperative is that I think 2030 SDG goals, we've lost the battle. Let's not lose the battle on plastic waste and recycling.
Yes. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. I think it's so time is also running fast, and so it's a last round we can say. So I'll request Dr. Vijay Habbu to have his closing remarks. At least 2 points what industry should follow.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
I think that's where I wanted to point to bring back the discussion on the theme. What corporates can do is specific examples I will give you. In locally please tie up with the local recyclers. There are enough recyclers available in your locality where your offices and head offices and branch offices are located. Tie up with local recyclers. There are enough number of plastic recyclers around you. People are actually wanting to have waste plastics so that they can recycle. There are large number of, because the government is, there is enough business opportunity coming for recyclers, so please tie up with that thing. And number two, what you can do is, as Mr. Suhas rightly mentioned, segregate the plastics that is coming into your offices and corporates. That will be the first step, that responsible behavior or responsible disposal, and then it becomes an easy journey. And third thing is, as I mentioned, avoid excessive plastics wherever you can. And fourth thing is, please do understand what the world of plastics is, and then take a call. Be clear about what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to do what exactly you're trying to do in sustainability, whether you're trying to reduce litter, etc. So these are specific steps. Thank you. Thank you for
sir.
inviting
Thank you.
me.
Dr. Bodak, sir, you have 2 points for the corporates.
I think Vijay said most of it. I would add that have a practice of conducting plastic audit
Yeah,
of the organization.
I think very valuable point, sir. I think yes.
It's very, very useful.
Yeah.
And having done such work for corporates, I have found this exercise opens an avenue for lots of alternatives,
Yeah.
also to reduce overconsumption. It also influences the procurement policies, the way you will procure. And then there are also interesting mechanisms on plastic credits as an outcome of the audit, where, funds are provided to the recyclers and an NGO to combat plastic waste and put it back to one more use. And there is already a market mechanism operating as a plastic credit, just like we talk about the carbon credits. Is a similar such concept, and corporates can show some leadership in this mechanism as well. But all happens only after you have done a thorough plastic audit.
Thank you. I think very important point, sir.
And Upendra, just to emphasize, I'm not saying plastic waste audit. It's a plastic audit.
I agree with you, sir. I agree, absolutely right. Sudha ma'am, 2 points for the corporate.
Okay, so there are two things that I can suggest. One is that we need collection centers for plastic waste, because you may be aware of the fact that kabadiwalas no longer take plastic waste. They still take paper waste, but they no longer pick up plastic waste. So that has become a major issue. And I would suggest that we have collection centers as not far, as close as possible. That would be one suggestion. And we should be looking at our personal care products and look at, whether the ingredient list has microplastics in it. So try to avoid buying those, and you can buy the organic stuff. That is definitely better for the environment.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Suha, sir.
Yeah, so a couple of points to make. I think, though I'm a lawyer, I would say don't wait for legislative changes to come and hit you.
Absolutely.
You see, there is communication required, there is awareness required, as Dr. Habbu sir said. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that need to go away. So for these things to happen, as also, becoming more responsible, whether it is your packing material, whether it is what you are using or receiving as a packing material, what is your supply chain, whatever it might be, becoming more responsible without waiting for the legislative changes to come in, I think would be a great responsibility, would be in discharge of those directors' duty at the board level for any corporate. The second point that I would like to say is that, there is a paucity of, what shall I say, a paucity of trust because there is lack of communication on this issue. The awareness is not as much as it ought to be at that level. So bring that back into the ecosystem of corporate India. And I think you will probably see some changes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. There's a one question is there from Dr. Nitin Kondalkar. So he's asking that whether pyrolysis or co-processing results in gaseous pollution, potential of carcinogenic effects. I think Modak sir can answer quickly so that.
No, these pollutants can be addressed. We have to really have the combustion or the temperature, in this case the pyrolysis, high enough so that you first of all suppress generation of such carcinogenic compounds, and then you have a afterwash treatment in case they get generated, either through thermal destruction further or through scrubbing. These are the ways that you could address these carcinogenic pollutants. The principle first is to ensure that they don't get generated first.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Mayura?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. I think we have to respect to the time. It is already 6 o'clock. So we will end here panel discussion here. There is no any other further questions as far as this thing panel discussion is considered. But we have one or two questions which is related with the legislation. We will take up with Mr. Guru and respond to them. So over to Mayura.
Thank you, everyone. So I would like to sum up here in the key takeaways for the ways or the pathways to inculcate the corporate lifestyle transmutation if we want to beat the plastic pollution. First will be don't overuse. Then we have a responsible behavior towards usage of practice in and around you. Then find the alternatives for the reuse. And as Modak sir pointed out, safe recycled plastic products are the need of the day. So this is what the takeaway which we can have, our audience can have for this insightful panel discussion. Now, to propose the vote of thanks, I would like to thank all the expert panel resources, Dr. Vijay Habbu sir, Dr. Modak sir, Dr. Sudha Goel ma'am, and Suhas sir for accepting our invitation and taking the time from their busy schedule to enlighten us and our audience. I would like to thank Mr. Gurau sir, who has taken out time in the last week to record the session with us and has given a very useful insight about the technicalities and the regulator's perspective of plastic waste recycling. So in his absence, I would like to thank him. I would like to thank the whole audience who patiently listened to all the program. Due to technical glitches, there were some difficulties. We apologize for that. But the whole program was attended by the participants in very enthusiastic way. So thank you one and all present here. Now I declare that the event is over. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all and thank you to all panelists.
Thank you.